If the customer is not prepared to engage with the process, they are usually not prepared to buy in the end. You need a lot of commitment in the beginning, and I think in Germany people don't giving that much confidence in the beginning, and they avoid any kind of process. As soon as they are willing to go with you in a process, I think the difference is not that high anymore, but to bring them into the process, that's the biggest challenge. I always get the questions, why change, why us, and why now? If you can answer these 3 questions in detail, then that can be enough to gain all the information you need and to work with the deal and finally to close the deal. The most important thing is understand why you do things, understand why you ask questions, understand what's the intent of the questions. Write it down. I have like my own library of more than 100 different questions. Always when you hear a great question, write it down. Build your own library and then adopt it and train it.
Thank you so much for listening to the first ever English sales podcast for the German-speaking market. Before we continue, I want to make you a promise. I promise that with this show, I will do my utmost best to bring in the guests and share the stories that help you succeed in the DACH market. But I can only do so much. So, if you hit the subscribe button, I can get more guests, bigger stories, and better insights to help you succeed in your sales job. So, with no further ado, sit back, relax, and let the show begin. Vinz, I know questioning techniques are quite vary. So there are quite a lot of techniques that you can use. There is also in terms of discovery, there's MEDDIC, there's BANT, there's PACT, there's SPICed, etc., etc. You name it, you probably also did it before. What do you think is a questioning technique that you do today? How is that different to what you used to do when you started in sales?
I mean, the biggest difference is, first of all, that I understand it as a technique at all, what I'm doing, and that I don't just ask questions for the sake of asking questions and just to keep the conversation running. But what I do different is that I now do it with a purpose of achieving a specific goal or getting a specific answer that I want to get, that I can follow up with, that I can work with. And also what I do different, because I figured out for me it's 100% clear what I want to achieve. For me it's 100% clear why is that important, why I'm asking for metrics, why I'm asking for the buyer situations. But for my prospect, that isn't a normal situation. So maybe they buy or they have to buy specific software for their team. They do that once a year, or they're doing that in the first time. So for them, that is not the comfort zone. And what I have implemented in my way to do it is to also always give context, to explain what I want to achieve with my questions. So I take their hand and take them with me into the journey of asking questions.
So if I, for instance, ask you, so what's your current approach? Then you would say, so the reason why I'm asking you that question is because if I understand where you're coming from, I can see how I can help you the best. So you always give an explanation with each question?
Exactly, that is what I mean. And that turns the way the prospect is thinking about the question. He understands, okay, he want to have an answer about things not working, so I give him the answer he need to understand. I take them into the questions and help them to giving better answers. But it also makes it much more comfortable for the prospect to know why I'm asking that. So no one want to go into a conversation with a stranger and just asking questions. So 1, 2 questions, okay, but then you start to, okay, what is this here? Q&A session?
Yeah, I feel like in sales calls, it's always super difficult to not come across as there's my checklist. So I need to ask you that question.
Yeah,
I need to ask you that question. It's more about the storyline. It's more about making it very comfortable for the person to answer without, ideally, they don't even know that you ask them a question. They're just like telling you.
100%.
Right. And with the technique, because you said before, it's super important to not only ask questions, it's important to understand that there is a technique behind it. Is there a specific technique that you use? And if so, what technique is it?
Yeah. For me, it's a combination of different techniques. My favorite is MEDDPICC, but MEDDPICC is sometimes just too extensive, too many questions to bring in one conversation. I think it's important to understand that you don't have to and also can't qualify everything in the first interview. But the more I get and the sooner I have all the information, the better I can work with the deal or in the deal. And this is, or in MEDDIC, all questions are very important or gain you very important information. And I figured out for myself, MEDDIC give me or MEDDPICC give me the most relevant questions. Also, when you're able to do a complete MEDDPICC qualification, it's always very easy to predict if this deal is coming or not, because you have all relevant information also around the buying committee. You also know there are topics from perspective of compliance or paperwork you have to, so that is why MEDDPICC is the most complete. I always do a little differentiation, so when it's a very easy deal and it's not that complex, I switch it to MEDDIC only. And as soon as I figure out that's a bigger buyer committee, I expect a paper process, then I switch it to MEDDPICC. But also apart from that, I always get the questions why change, why us, and why now are my 3 personal ones. And I know also a lot of companies working with the 3 why questions so far. So if you can answer these 3 questions in detail or very detailed, then also that can be enough to gain all the information you need and to work with the deal and finally to close the deal. So that's why I always do a combination. Sometimes MEDDPICC didn't work out, but I can place all the 3 why questions and they are enough to move forward. And definitely enough to make a decision if I want to go forward with the deal.
Okay. And for those people who don't know MEDDIC or MEDDPICC, can you just give a little bit of an overview of that methodology?
Sure, yeah. MEDDPICC or MEDDIC, so MEDDPICC, it's only extension of MEDDIC at 2 more letters. We explain it with MEDDIC, it gives you the most relevant information about the deal. Metrics, so that mean you can word it differently. It could be the pain point, it could be the buying intention, but there is any kind of metric you can working with. You have the economic buyer, so it's clear I am talking to the right person. They have also the ability to make a decision and to buy in the end. We talk about the 2 Ds. It's the decision criteria and the decision process. So as soon as you figure out what's their criteria to make a decision and how does the process look like, that also help you to make a mutual action plan. So what are my next steps to make sure that we also following their buying process, for example. We also have the interest or the pain point. So what's the main reason to buy, or what's the impact if they buy, and that also gives you context. Maybe what's the impact if they doesn't buy. And finally, we have the champion, and in MEDDPICC we also have the competition. So that gives you also a clear understanding who is my champion, who driving the deal inside the company. So who is the one person that I need to enable to sell it in the company. And also competition is a very relevant information. As soon as we know there is competition in place, it's much easier to work or to reflect that in the deal, to make sure how they are in the process with the competition. But that also gives you a very valuable information. As soon as you know your 1 or 3 biggest competitors in place, gives you also a better understanding. Okay, they're definitely searching for a solution like yours. What we have to point out now is why we are the best provider. And that also can turn how you plan and structure your next steps. And that's why it's important.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I love having a framework in general. Like, I was once asked, like, why do we need to train that anyway? Like, why do we need to know about those different options? And for me, it is if you're ever in a call and you lose your, excuse the French, but you lose your shit and you're just nervous, and then you will never fall lower than the technique that you're using. So you will never lose the call. You're always kind of guided. You always know, okay, cool. I need to make sure that I understand this, I understand that, I understand this. So my question is, with that in mind, obviously we're speaking about the DACH market, so the German speaking market. Do you feel like qualifying German speaking leads, maybe like let's say German leads or Austrian leads or Swiss
Yeah.
leads, how do they differ? How are they different to England or to America? Do you see what questions are more relevant or less relevant in those conversations?
Yeah. I think that question is not so easy to answer because I always had a strong focus on the DACH market and not that many international leads. So I'm not sure if I can 100% be the person to put that in any kind of relation. But for the DACH market, I can definitely say it's clearly the management of expectations. For, as I explained before, for the customer, the sales process is nothing ordinary. Um, and so I explain the process, and then we see whether he wants to get involved or not. So I make it very transparent. And if the customer is not prepared to engage with the process, they are usually not prepared to buy in the end. So you need a lot of commitment in the beginning. Here is also a differentiation between inbound and outbound. In inbound, it's not that hard. I mean, they coming up with a buying intention. Especially in outbound, there is a lot of upfront work to make them ready for the process. So that's the first challenge, and that's why you cannot use the same techniques, same questions for outbound deals. You have to open them up before for the process. And I think that is a bit different. In Germany, people are they knowing the business, so they being a bit yeah, they don't giving that much confidence in the beginning, and they avoid from any kind of process because they know as soon they start into a process, they have following steps, they have other meetings doing, and they definitely take a lot of time to make sure if they want to go that step with you. So as soon as you have them in the process and they are willing to go with you in the process, I think the difference is not that high anymore. But to bring them into the process, that's the biggest challenge.
And how do you usually face that?
How
That
I'm personally faced that,
So yeah, so do you have a specific question or how, for me, for instance, because I 100% agree what you say. I feel
yeah,
like German, well, I'm going to say Germany for now. What I see with Germany is you need to build a lot of trust at the beginning because there's always that little feeling of you're a salesperson, you're going to try and get me to sign those papers. It's all about you. You're not looking at me, you're not looking for my value, so I have to be extra cautious. Also, there are so many legal requirements. What about GDPR? What about SOC 2? What about double opt-in, etc., 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 etc. So I feel like what I need to do, and I'm just a relationship buyer, a seller, right? Like I build a lot of relationship at
Yeah.
the beginning with making the person smile, with making sure that they know that I'm in their team, that I'm trying to find their solution, which is why I loved what you said at the beginning, that you explain why you ask specific questions, because then they can't get suspicious. It's not a feeling of, oh, they're
Yeah.
hiding something from me. It's complete transparency, and you're like, hey, I'm just trying to find the best solution here for you. This is why I'm asking, do you have your own process there? Like, how do you gain trust from German speaking prospects to trust the process to then join the process in the end?
Yes. I have definitely three questions for that, that I use, I would say, in more than 90% of my conversations. And the first two of them are very technical questions. So in the first kind of conversation is always, I talk about the expectations. So what expectations did you yourself bring to our conversation today? And what do you need to learn from me today? Make it worthwhile for you to invest that 20 minutes in that conversation we have today. That is always my opening for expectation management. And that gains so much insights. Sometimes they repeat, I just want to check out. I have no idea how a solution like that can help us. And that also gives me the understanding, okay, we have here a typical window shopper. So he has interest for the topic, but he needs to gain a lot of information. And also, I have to open their mind before. So that means the conversation will be very informative for them now that I have to do in the next 20 minutes. Um, I have already placed the first question with which I can use for qualification or disqualification. If the expectation doesn't match the process at all, I can already steer you in the right direction. So maybe I can use this and gain enough interest and open them for maybe problems they don't see so far, or they only want to grab some information and work with them by themselves. But that gives me the answer, okay, that's an informative call about 20 minutes. I don't have to think about next steps. Before I cannot change this, we don't have to move forward in the process. What's totally fair. And the second question that I always add is, I would like to understand you and your situation better. So I will ask you a few more questions. Is that okay with you? It's very similar than you repeat, or the question you repeat before. That also gives context what I want, and I can check out, are they willing to give me that information now? That's why I also end with, is that okay with you? So they can make the decision. And I think that is also something working very well in the German speaking market. People want control. They want the control in their hand, and I give them the control. I guide them. That is also something I think that is different in my process, or become different in my process during all the expertise from the last years. And that works pretty well if you let them control and you just guide them. And I also have, for me, it's a no-brainer question to end the call. It's, how does this fit in with your idea? And how would you like to organize the next steps with me? And sometimes I extend that and also add, do you already have a concrete idea? or should I just make a suggestion? I do that when the call was not 100% running like I wanted, or we don't have gained a lot of information out of the call. Then I give them the extension that I say, I have an idea, I can make a suggestion, but if you have another one or have already one in mind, then go on, move forward with yours. And that also, with that, I'm mainly asking how much commitment and also initiative I can get this early on. And that helped me to qualify or disqualify very early. If there is 0 to no commitment and also no initiative, I can decide, is it maybe a big brand, a big name, or is it a super large deal size that I want to contribute anyways? Or maybe I put them in nurturing, re-engage, because I see there is no commitment for entering the sales process at the moment.
I love that. I love you said like 2 words that really resonated with me as well, which was control and commitment. The
Yeah.
first part is give them the feeling of they are in control, which makes them feel less suspicious of you because they feel like that they get what they want. I love that. I love that. And I 100% agree. I feel like in the German speaking market, in the DACH market, there is a lot of efficiency and there is a lot of like suspicion towards sellers because we used to sell in the American way. And that is what we started to realize. The American way doesn't work anymore. Now with everything, with the internet, with everything that changed, we need to sell regional based, which is in my opinion, even like the sales in Switzerland or Austria or Germany is slightly different as well. So the control part, I feel like is super, super crucial. And the commitment part, I like a lot as well because I feel like in the DACH market, they will commit. Like there is an efficiency in the work. If they say they're going to be in touch with you, or if they say, hey, it's interesting, let's book in a call, you will see based on their commitment how likely it is to close. And it sounds weird, but I know a friend of mine who's selling into the French market, he told me, and I hope that I don't step on anyone's toes here, but he told me what you have to do in a French call is you first need to let them complain. They just complain, complain. And you start selling in the second or third call, which for me was a mind blow. I'm like, what? That's inefficient. Like, no, the first call, get the commitment, understand, like give them the control, understand where they're coming from. So I love what you're saying. And I do feel like that is very, typical, especially as soon as someone sells to someone in DACH, they understand the difference between DACH commitment and American commitment or French commitment, because it is just, I want to say faster or maybe just more efficient. Just so I got this right. So your 3 killer
I think,
questions.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's also the difference. So German people, or especially DACH people, need a bit more time. They need to make a decision because when they decide, they do it with commitment. But they don't give you always commitment in the first call. If they are not sure to following it, they don't give you any kind of commitment. I think especially US and UK, they say, oh great, we love your idea, we love your solution, that looking so promising. Book a next call, we love it, and you never hear from them. If the Germans give you a commitment for the next call, they will stay in.
So you were gone there. What did you say? Sorry.
So if Germans give you commitment for the next call, they will join it. So they will following the process.
Yeah, 100%. So guys, if you sell to the DACH market, make sure getting the commitment and getting the giving them the idea of having control, so that you're not a sleazy salesperson. So that means the 3 questions in the first call is the way that you also qualify or disqualify your time, if that makes sense, like qualify the person. What is it that you expect of the call? I want to understand your current situation. Can you tell me a bit more? Is that okay with you? And does this fit into your idea? So that question probably comes at the end after you did a bit of a pitch. You kind of explained how you can actually help them.
Yes.
Cool. Very, very cool. Super interesting. With MEDDPICC, I have a little bit of a challenge with that because I feel like MEDDPICC is great as an AE. It is difficult as an SDR because you don't usually get to qualify the whole thing, which is why I feel like as an account executive, you do need a different qualification than as an SDR, so sales development representative. How do you see that? And if you agree, what is the framework that you would always recommend SDR selling into the DACH market?
Yeah. Um, 100% fair point. Also, what I mentioned before, MEDDPICC or MEDDIC can be too extensive in the beginning. And we use it here as a team. I use it with my super SDR, Kirsten. She's the greatest, so I have to shout
Absolute
out
queen,
her as
guys.
well. And she exactly knows what are the most important ones in the beginning. She is not asking for the paperwork, and she's also not asking for competition. What she tries to figure out, is it already the economic buyer I'm talking to, or is it just the champion I'm talking to? And what she is focusing is impact and pain, and also the metrics. And she knew as soon as she can give me one of them, we can work. We can start to work with the deal. So she absolutely understands it's not her job to qualify um, any point. Better qualify one, and that in heavy details. So as soon as she can give me metrics or impact and pain in a good detail, we can work with the deal. That is how we use MEDDIC as a tandem, that we absolutely know which topic is important in which stage. If you have to, or if you don't have the deep tandem with your account executive, or maybe you have to have a round robin system and you're serving different people in the company, it can make a lot of sense to have a specific framework for SDRs. I think you can use any of the easy ones. Spin, Spice, they covering nearly the same topics. So Spice is no big difference to MEDDIC. It's a bit less, or there are less topics you have to qualify, but the context is the same.
And how about outbounding? Because I feel like the biggest challenge that companies have is getting into the DACH market from an outbound perspective. Is there a specific question, let's just say cold calling, right? When you kind of
Yeah.
have to ask questions or have to ask specific questions to keep their interest before you get their commitment. What, how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I often see that people work with outbound deals the same way like inbound deals. Often account executives have a big issue with not taking the deal over because there are two questions not asked, but there are two questions you cannot place in an outbound call. I always have to smile when AEs reject deals because there is no budget committed. And that is something you cannot do in an outbound with an outbound deal or with an outbound prospect. With an outbound prospect, I have or what I can give is the idea of, we also use the 3 why question. Why change? Why us? Why now? But here comes the magic. We turn it around. Not the prospect has to answer the question. I have to answer the question now when I'm talking to an outbound person. I have to make sure to have a conversation deep enough to answer that 3 questions. And then I can ask them, do you understand this too, or do you understand that in the same way? So, Helena, example. Let's imagine we had a conversation and I can come with maybe we use GDPR, that's easy, everyone can understand that. I'm the only provider with GDPR compliance, they can cover your issue. And that is for me, I can answer the question, why us now? So I can answer, okay, it makes sense to work with us because we are the only provider covering the GDPR and compliance topic. And that I can play you back. So, Helena, I think it makes a lot of sense that we dig deeper in that together, because I'm not sure if you know, but we are the only provider in the market covering your GDPR and compliance requests. So also, if you do research or you want to watch into different providers, you will come back to us anyways. So I think that is, from my perspective, why it makes a lot of sense that we talk.
Okay. And do you do that right at the start?
If possible, if the conversation allows it, if you have the commitment to have an open conversation and you figure out you can get to all the informations necessary, then do it in the first call. The sooner the better.
I like that. I like that simplicity of it as well, right? Don't bother learning all of those. You now have to do. You have to answer those 100 questions in the first 10 seconds of your cold call or of your email or whatever. Instead, going from the other way and say, hey, you need to answer that to them before you can ask them the same questions down the line. I think that's a really, really good point, especially in outbound. I think people underestimate the psychology of it, of like they are
Yeah.
usually satisfied with where they're at. So they have to understand, they have to realize first that maybe there is a problem or a better solution where they can save money, keep control, etc., etc., etc. So I think that's a really, really good point. I guess because I've had so much like wisdom in the masterclass you did about the questioning in DACH. It was so fascinating to go through each question, and I think one big thing that I hope that everyone takes away from this episode is that every question is serving a specific purpose. So understanding the why do you ask this question right now, what do you want to get, and what do you try to get the other person to feel, in that case control, and ideally give you commitment, I think is such a crucial part in the DACH market. Is there anything else that you feel like, oh, Helena, before anyone starts qualifying, asking any questions in the DACH market, they need to know this?
Yeah, it's absolutely no rocket science. As you mentioned, the most important thing is understand why you do things, understand why you ask questions, understand what's the intent of the questions, and then it's absolutely no rocket science. Then you can train it, you can adopt it, and the more you train it, the better you become. Also, write it down. I have like my own library of, I think it's grown to, there are definitely more than 100 different questions. Um, but 30 questions try to reach the same thing, for example. So I can decide which wording, which framing works the best for me in the end. I don't have to have 100 questions in mind. For me, it's important what I want to reach with the question. What's my achievement? What should the answer look like that I will get? And then I can use the question for it. And write questions down. Always when you hear a great question, write it down. Build your own library and then adopt it and train it. I mean, for you, Helena, as an actor, I think it's very familiar to also actor have to jump into a role and not can do that freestyle. I think no actor can, there are few talented ones they can do it, but also actors preparing for their roles. They they try to change their personality for a role. So what we do in sales is way easier. We don't have to change personalities. We have to adopt till it fits to our own personality, and we only have to understand why we are doing that and where is guiding us that.
Yeah, I love the own questionnaire catalog idea as well. Just writing down, even when you hear a colleague being on the phone and you're like, oh my goodness, that question is brilliant. Let me just like add that to my little questionnaire, and I can use that in the next call. Like learn from each other as well. And 100% agreed, Vince, with acting. The first thing that you do is you ask, why is that person doing what they're doing? You don't play the villain, you understand the villain. That's the part that you wanna get. You understand the motive and all of that. I think one last thing that I wanted to discuss with you is, for me, what has worked really, really well to get away from a salesy, okay, cool, I need to ask these questions kind of way, and understand when I have to ask which question to make it comfortable for the other one. It's a storyline technique. So understand at the beginning, you kind of want to establish the status quo of asking questions about the current approach. Like, what are you currently doing? To then understand what is the reason why you're spending time with me right now? Like, what's the problem here? And then understand the consequences out of that problem. Like, okay, cool. So if that's the problem, then I assume you probably need 2 weeks until you can make a decision because you don't have real-time data on XYZ. Like +1 +1 +1, which kind of leaves them with the climax of, oh my goodness, if I continue doing what I'm doing, then the world is going to blow up. And that's the moment when I explain to them, okay, cool, so this is how we can fix this. And I kind of go through all of the consequences backwards almost to establish a new status quo in an ideal world, like the dream state, to say, if that sounds like something that you want to achieve, why don't we book in 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever, to go through that together, and I can show you ABC. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's if we slice that, then we see it's nothing else like giving context on the right place. So take your prospect with you in the whole question game, and also just build up. Understand, if I get that answer, what could be my next move? What could be my next question to follow up with? And if you train that and becoming comfortable in that, it becomes easy to combine different questions in a conversation and use questions to guide the whole call.
Amazing. Amazing. Vince, it was an absolute joy to be here with you. Thank you so much for
As always.
as always, of course. Guys, if you're interested in just having more questions or understanding where you can find the masterclass from Vince, first of all, you see it in the notes. Second, I'm just going to say it, Vince, I hope it's okay with you. Reach out to him on LinkedIn. Again, I will link his LinkedIn profile in the notes, so you always get the answers that you need. And otherwise, Vince, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure, and I am very excited to see you again very soon, maybe at the SDS of Germany Ambassador meetup.
Great, amazing. Thank you very much. Looking forward to meet all you guys. If you have a great question, please feel free, come around with that. I would love to add them to my library. If someone struggle with, I have no idea about the right questions, also feel free to approach me. I will share my library with everyone asking for it, and have fun. And I hope it's helpful for you, or I can help the one or another to understand that better, how to revolutionize your question game.